All right. Good morning once again. Welcome to Digital Zeal. So I will start by recapping some of the things we did last time before we dive into our assignments for this section. So if you remember, I think the last class, was it the first class? Somebody should respond. Was it the only class we've had so far on Power BI? I'm not sure. I think because I know that we have covered the general introductions. I think that should be second class. We have covered general introduction to Power BI, where I told us that Power BI is one of the most known data visualization application when it comes to data analytics. And I also pointed out so many advantages why data analysts should be conversant or understand how to use Power BI as one of his or her tools for analyzing, particularly visualizing data. So one of the advantage that I mentioned was Power BI has a lot of visualization models. I remember I told us that models are the structure. They are like the container which are used to present our insights. Because I want to get a response if we are also acknowledging that we have covered all this that I'm saying. And then after that, we looked at how do we access Power BI on our system. We went through all the steps on how to install it, on how to launch it, just like I've opened mine. Then the next topic I think was focused on, we also try to understand the different parts of the Power BI interface, out of which we identify the titles section, then the tabs section, the visualization section, the data section, and then where you have your dashboard. All right, so like I was saying, I think was the second class, the focus was on data loading. I'm not getting a response from anybody. I hope we are all here. The focus was on data loading. And I told us that there are several ways we can load data into Power BI, depending on the gateway you want to use. And I'm very sure that for us to be able to load these three data sets here, it means that we actually completed two of this gateway, that is loading Excel data and loading CSV data. So this section, I want to continue with data cleaning in Power BI. Data cleaning in Power BI. Please, can anybody hear me? I want to be sure that we are here. Data cleaning in Power BI. So what is data cleaning? Now, this is not the first time we are coming across this term. All the way from Excel, we have been talking about data cleaning, data cleaning. So data cleaning is an essential component or part of data analytics. It is almost impossible for you to proceed to analyzing data when you have not, perfected or cleaned the data you are given. It is not an optional. it is a must engagement. You must always make sure that your data is properly cleaned, because if you analyze data that is full of errors, there are possibility of you presenting wrong insights. And that is why we are all charged to always clean our data. Yes, there are times you might be lucky that you can be given 90% clean data, but that doesn't mean that you should not observe that process. You must always assume that the data has not been cleaned so that you can utilize that option. Because when you start working with that mindset that the data is clean without conducting proper, checkup, you might end up analyzing erroneous data, which is very, very dangerous in this field, We are not meant to analyze wrong or erroneous data. So that is what I'm going to be focusing on throughout this session. Probably on Monday morning, we will start the main analysis. So because Power BI has a lot of tools that can be used to perform data cleaning. That is one of its strengths compared to other programs. Remember, its first strength is ability to visualize data, which is the main reason why we use it. And then another advantage of it is the provision of numerous data cleaning tools. So let's look at data cleaning in the proper context. What is data cleaning? So data cleaning is the process of identifying, I want us to highlight these keywords. So it is the process of identifying, that is, ability to detect the error. So you must be familiar with functions that can help you to detect, or the process of employing those functions that can help you to detect the error is still under data cleaning. That's what we are saying. Identifying, correcting. So one thing in data cleaning is not just to identify those errors. Otherwise, your data cleaning exercise is not complete. So you should be able to identify error where there are errors. And then number two, you should be able to know how to use your available tools or functions to read off those errors. That is what? Correcting and transforming raw data into a consistent, accurate, and usable format for your analysis. There are powerful keywords that are used there that we need to understand. Let me take that definition again for the sake of those that are noting down points. I said data cleaning is the process of identifying, that's the first keyword, correcting, that is the second keyword, and transforming, that's the third keyword, raw data into a consistent, accurate, and usable format for analysis. So you can see all the processes that are involved. So how do I know that I'm a data cleaner? As a data analyst, how do I know that I actually understand or I can clean data? Is the ability to deploy techniques, functions that can, detect those errors and also correct those errors, and also transform. Because there are some data you might be given that the structure might be wrong, because at times the individual that collect this data, they are not data analysts that knows what you are going to do after their own session. So they will collect the data anyhow. That is the kind of data we refer to as unstructured data. So when such a data is given to you as a professional analyst, you are expected to to restructure. So the moment you start tampering with your data, The moment you start making changes. So the moment you start tampering with the data, or the moment you start making changes, you are already cleaning the data. So let's understand that very well. So just to add to it, data cleaning is mainly done in Power BI using a separate interface called Power Query, or Query Editor. All right, so let's get that understand. Even in Excel, there is a dedicated part that is used for cleaning data, which is called Power Query. But in Power BI, we also have it also, which is also referred to as Query Editor, referred to Query Editor. So we need to understand that we are not going to analyze our data in the same environment where we ought to clean it. So like I'm going to show us in this section, you will see how we will leave this environment to that query editor. So in other words, that query editor is a component of Power BI. It is an interface integrated or that exists within the Power BI just for data cleaning. Please, I want to get a feedback if someone is following. Okay, so I will assume that we are following. All right. So I just want to bring our attention to that because when you go for an interview, they may want to find out if you clean data in Power BI, which environment do you use? You tell them you use what? Power BI what? Query editor. All right, where you apply transformation steps before loading your data. That is the definition of the query editor. That is where you apply your transformation steps before you load the data into your analysis dashboard. Remember when we were learning how to load data the other time, I pointed it out to us that at that point, we were just learning how to load the data. And even we were conscious of cleaning the data, we will have just what redirected the data to this query editor and make sure that we perfect the data before we finally load it into what? The dashboard here or the data section. So we need to understand that that is how Power BI is structured for cleaning data. So let's quickly spend some time to understand the Power Query Editor. Let's spend some time to understand what is called the Power Query Editor that I'm talking about, which is an interface for data cleaning. So Power Query Editor is a data transformation tool in Power BI. We need to understand it. It's a data transformation tool in what Power BI used to clean. Let's take note of these keywords. Used to clean, right? Used to clean. Let me see if I can be writing some of them on the screen. So I said used to, number one function of that Power BI query editor. It provides us two used to what? Number one, clean. Number one, clean. Then number two, reshape, reshape. Then number three is let's say what? Prepare the data before analysis. So we need to understand this. So I want you to know that the entire exercise or what we can do with the Power Query is for us to clean our data, to reshape the data, and to prepare the data for analysis. Are we communicating? If I can get somebody that is following to respond, fine. All right. So we need to establish all this when it comes to Power Query. All right. So now let's look at some of the key areas. We need to understand. But before that, That is, let's quickly look at how do we even get to that Power Query section. How do we activate it? Now that we have loaded our data, how do we switch the data back to the to the query editor to check if we have few things to tighten up before we finally load the data in? Because like I told us before, we will have taken advantage of when we were bringing in the data to click on that transform data instead of load. But it is also good that you load your data. When it's time for you to start your analysis, you redirect them to Power Cleaning, to the cleaning section, so that you can, take a good look at them again before you finally load them in. So let's quickly look at how to load our data into the query editor, into the Power Query editor. How do we load our data? We have our data already loaded to our dashboard, but we want to take them to, just give me a few. My. All right, sorry about that. I just have to sort out the issue. So, like I was saying, we want to look at how do we migrate our data, which has already been loaded, into the Power Query section, so that we can examine the data and see if there are errors. And if there are errors, we utilize the available query function to clean them up. So as you can see from our data section, we have already loaded 3 different data sets that I would like to access in the Power BI query editor. So the first thing you do, you go to Home tab, and then you click on Data Transform. You go to Home tab, then click on Data Transform. And then once you click on Data Transform, you are going to see this option. The first one says Transform Data. So you can see that as soon as I hovered on it, what do you get? Use the Power Query Editor to connect, prepare, and transform data. So I'll click on this option, and then watch what is going to happen. It's going to switch us from the dashboard environment to the query session. Like I told us, is a different component that is created within Power BI just to enable us to perform those 3 things I mentioned: clean your data, reshape your data, and prepare your data before you start your analysis. All right, I hope you are still with me. Sorry, there was a little disturbance. I need to sort it out. Okay, so as you can see, this is the Power BI query editor we are talking about. So you can see that I deliberately shrink it so that you can still be seeing the two interfaces. Look at where we were before and look at where we are now, which clearly showed that there are two different environments, which also show that this is a component. This is one of the feature or the pillar in what Power BI, like we have been saying since, is designed for you to clean, to reshape, and to prepare your data before loading it here. So it is expected that any data that you have loaded here to an extent has been cleaned. And peradventure, you just loaded the data without cleaning it. You can see how I brought it back to the Power Query editor. So we are going to spend some time looking at some of these, some of the ways we can clean up our data here. So one of the benefits of cleaning data here is that we can always, undo the step. And that is what you see recorded in this section. That's it, apply steps. So if, for example, I delete this column, or maybe I make some changes in this particular column, I can always, anytime, return it if I feel that that shouldn't have been done. So that is one advantage compared to Excel and other. Though Excel have this same environment, the same way it is. There are some of us that go there to do our data cleaning instead of using the direct application to clean up data in Excel. So, but before we proceed, I really want us to understand what we call data type. What we call data type, because it's very important we understand it. Yes. So, like I was saying, I hope you are still with me. I need to hear from at least one person. People are just muted. Nobody's responding to questions. So, like I was saying, we have
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
we have this section. We have the whole of this section, which help us to track all our changes. Like we are going to see it playing out. But I wanted to familiarize all with something so that you will not get confused. The what we call data type and conversion. I want to believe for those of us that have obtained Python training will understand what is data type. Data type in programming, they are different kind of information a programmer uses to program. So what we are typically saying here is that before we dive into manipulating or cleaning this data, we need to understand that one of the advantages is that you might be asked to change the data type. That is the first activity that I want to engage in here. It might be that the reason why you brought the data here is because you are trying to perform probably some analysis. You are trying to carry out some aggregate analysis, but the values are not numerical value, or probably they are in numerical value, but they are supposed to be in a string value. Remember then we talked about primitive data type. I don't want to go back there because I believe since we are coming from Python, we should understand, for some of us, we should understand that data type, we have string, we have number, we have Boolean, and then we have the composite or the advanced data type. So for example, what I wanted you to know here, which is very, very key that you understand, so that when you want to tamper with the content of values in a column, you know the kind of data you are working with. So if you look at this now, we have capital letter A and B. Whenever you see this sign attached to a column or a feature, it means string. It means that all the values you have under it, they are text. That is what it means. So which means that these are string values, these are string values, these are string value, these are also what? String value. So I'm still checking. Now you can see once you carry this date icon, this is date. So we must, whenever you are working on data here in Power BI query, you must understand the type of data you want to work with. And peradventure you want to change from one data type to another is still very possible. I'm going to show us. I just want us to identify these classes of what? Data type. So once you see this capital letter AB, that tells you that what? That is what? Text-based data type, which is called string. Now, once you see this icon, this is dates. Then once you see this icon, 1, 2, 3, that is an integer. Remember that in programming, we say integers are whole numbers. So which means that the values that we have here do not have decimal unit. They are completely what? Whole numbers. So please take note of the icon. So let's still go. Then this is date. We have identified that this is also an integer. Now look at here now where we have dot. What do you see there? Once you see 1.2, once you see 1.2, that represents floats. In programming, floats are numbers with decimal word point or unit. So take note of the representation. Now this is also float. Then this is float. This is float. In fact, every other ones are float. So that is the first thing I want us to understand. But where I'm driving to is how do we convert? How do we convert? For example, now I want to convert float to what? Integer. That is where I'm actually going to, because there are scenarios where that will be involved as data analysts when you are working with some data. There are times you may be asked to, or you'll be forced due to trying to reshape your data or try to change the format that will require data conversion. All right. So just to put it in proper context, I said a data type defines a kind of value stored in a column. Data type determine or define the kind of value stored in a column, like I just was walk us through right now. So let's look at the important function for changing data type. Now look at this here. Now once you click on this drop down, once you click on the drop down, what you access is what? Command like sort or filter, because to an extent you can perform some analysis here, but this is not the main place where you are expected to do analysis. All right. So when you click on, please take note of what I'm showing us. If you come here, it means you are accessing those analysis or data restructuring. We'll talk about reshaping. If you switch your data from descending order to ascending order, what you have done is you have just reshaped the data. You have changed the structure. So if that is your aim, you click here. But if you click on this particular, that place where I pointed at the data type 1.2 or ABCD, if you touch it, it means you want to view the available other data type. Probably you want to switch from the current one to. Right now we are in the what? The whole number. Sorry, we are in the what? The decimal number, which is float. So I can switch it to what? Whole number. Now what happened? And then it will ask you, change column type. The select column has existing type conversion. Would you like to replace the existing conversion or preserve the existing conversion and add the new conversion as a separate step? So the choice is yours. You can decide to say replace the current. So once I click watch what is going to happen, it has automatically rounded up what? All the numbers to what? Whole numbers. So now if we are asked, we have just converted from floats to integer. Please let me also get a response from one person at least, just to know if we are following. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now the same thing here, because like I cited before, all this that I am demonstrating, depending on the analysis task, a client can give you a data set and instructs you to do away with all the decimal unit, and in fact can tell you that round up all the number to what? To whole number. So you don't have to go to Excel and start deleting all the decimal places or units. All you need just to bring it here. Then you switch from that to the whole number. Then I can also go back, click on it again, and then switch back to what? Decimal number. And I say replace what? The current. So we can handle this. So what we just did, it is called data conversion. It is called data conversion, which is part of data cleaning, because you have changed the format. Remember, we highlighted three things. You have also transformed the data. So let's look at how to remove errors, null, how to remove error, null, duplicate from our data, which is very key when we are talking about data cleaning. These are some of the key things you should always prioritize: removing error, removing nulls. When I say null, I'm talking about this. Let me write it so that you know what we are talking about. So what we are looking at is what? Removing errors. Removing errors. We are looking at three things at the same time: removing error and nulls and duplicate. So these three things are very, very dangerous that you have them in your data set before you proceed to your analysis. You must find a way of doing away with them. Errors are very dangerous. So how do we remove error? Let's look at it. Let's define it first. Cleaning invalid or repeated data ensure accuracy and prevents misleading analysis. Why should I remove error? Why should I remove duplicate? I say what? Cleaning invalid, which are error, or repeated data, which are duplicates, right? Data ensure accuracy and prevents misleading analysis. That's why I started by telling us that it's very important to understand the role data cleaning play. Whether you are using Excel, you must clean up your data. Power BI, you must clean up your data. So data cleaning techniques in Power BI is what we are exploring right now. So how do I remove errors from my data sets? Number one, to delete rows that contain calculation or format. So this is what we are going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to group these operations for clarity purpose. Now, the first thing we are going to do is this. Let's look at possible errors that could exist in columns. So if we have errors in columns, how do we handle them? Then when we are done with that one, we look at errors that can exist in rows. And then with that, it will enable us to flow better. Now, looking at your tab here, you can see where we have manage column. You can see the whole of this section that says what? Manage columns. And here talks about reduce rows. So I am going to walk us through how you can use the command that falls under dealing with errors within column and dealing with error within rows. So let's start with the column. Now, for the column, we have it in two sections. We have choose column and we have what? Remove what? Columns. Now, let's take the ones under choose column, and I'll be telling all different scenarios where you might need it. So let's say I expand it. I have two options under it. I have the choose column. I have what? Go to column. So let me start from here. Now, as soon as I click on choose column, what Power BI did is to call out all the columns, all the features, all the headers in the data set. Why? Because you want to look at the statement here. choose the column to keep. Remember, this is cleaning. For example, I want to look at two-column value temporarily, for example, or yes, I want to look at item type and I want to look at what? Revenue. I want to compare them. I want the entire data to be narrowed towards just these two columns. Is either these are the columns that want to make my analysis data, that at the end of the day, these are the only two columns that I want to analyze their value. So which means that I am directly or indirectly dropping some columns, not to display, not to appear in my data set. So what I'm going to do is to what? They say choose the column to keep. So I will click here first to turn off the entire selection. Then I will now single-handedly click, okay, I want to see country, I want to see this, and then of course, and I'm going to be aggregating or I'm going to be analyzing or summarizing values or summarizing total revenue or total profit against either item type or country. So that is actually my reasoning by what? Dropping the rest. So now that we have done this, if I click on OK, let's say the kind of data, you see that you have automatically deleted what? Other what? Column, and you now have just these 3 to 4 columns, making your data you want to analyze. So that is exactly what we are. You can see how swiftly I was able to clean the data now. Now, if this is the final data I want to analyze, then I will now what? Load it. I will now come here and click here and select what? Close and apply. Or just apply and leave it here. Or close without even what? Applying. But the best option is for you to select close and apply so that it will override the initial data. So by the time I load this into my dashboard, the entire data set that we brought in will have been, trimmed towards 4 columns. Please, I want to get a response if we are following, at least from one person. I want to get a response, please. Let's do that very quick. Okay, so I just assume that maybe we are here, but we are not here. Okay, now another thing I want to point out is that you see what I told us, these are the changes. So let's assume that you only wanted to look at these 4 columns value. And then after that, you want to return everything. You see that particular step that trimmed the entire data to just 4 columns has been tracked here. So all I need to do is just to locate this arrow, or sorry, this X, and click on it. So that will undo, that will return the previous, the step. So now we have just learned how to use this, one of the function under what? Choose column. So that is another perfect way you can do away with some column, sharp. So let's go to a column. Now go to a column helps you to, let's say within the data you are given, you want to also jump to a particular column that is not currently within the screen view. What do I mean by that? You can see that right now I'm not seeing revenue. And instead of me as a data analyst to be doing like this, just because I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to look at the data, whether there are error, and there's a particular column that I know that it exists, I want to jump to where it is. In other words, I want to be focused on the view point or viewports. So now that is when I will use what? That is when I will use the go to column. So from here, I can just say, okay, I want to jump to total and click here. And then by the time you select okay, you see that it brings the total close. You can see that now I'm able to see the total revenue, irrespective of where it was. I can say, okay, I want to view total. I want to view total. In other words, go to what? Which column? Okay, go to total profit for me. And then you click. So you can see that it will just focus you on that particular column. So these are techniques that we use when you are cleaning. At some point, you want to jump from where you are to a particular column that exists within the data, but you are not seeing it at that moment. Then you can deploy that option. I hope we are following. All right, so sorry about that. So now that is how to I hope we are following, please. I want to get response from you guys. Are we
Yes,
really?
we are following.
Well, you have to be responding on time. See that we are cooking, we are doing other things there. We are in a class. Let's know that we are in a class. All right, so that is what of the data cleaning tool. So that brings us to the end of the ones under column, right? Now, but before I go to row, there are other shortcut ways of cleaning data that I really want to walk us through so that I will know that I'm done with anything that has to do with column before I shift my focus to rows. Now, outside accessing some of the shortcuts here, there are a few things you can do. For example, I just showed us one now, how you can change your data type by just clicking on the data type word notation. Now, what about if I want to remove duplicates? Let's say I want to remove a duplicate from this column. So you can right click actually. You can see the moment you right click on that column, you will see a lot of data cleaning feature given to you. All right, so from here, I can say, okay, if the first option here is that I want to even delete the whole of that column. I don't want to go through that choose column. I will drop some column. I want to do it here directly. So I can just come here and say what? Remove. So I've automatically what? Remove that column. And that step is recorded here. So I could just click here and then I return it. So another thing again I can do, you right click again, you can remove other columns. Other column. So sometimes I use this option. What it means is that, for example, how do you select multiple column? You click on the first one, hold down the shift button on your keyboard and select, let's say I have, let's say, sorry, hold down the control button. Click on the first column, then hold down the control button and click on other column. So right now, I have selected three different columns. I have selected three different columns. And what is the data cleaning I want to do here? Is that I want to keep these three columns. Every other one should go, just like that, choose columns. But I'm doing it technically here now. So which means that if I right click on any of those ones that I selected, now if I select this option that says remove other column, it means outside these ones that are selected, other ones should leave. That is what we are saying. So let's look at it. You can see how I'm able to clean up the data within few seconds. Are we here? Mrs. Oikosi, are you following? Are you following? I hope. Okay, so let me assume that we are following. So you can see how I remove those other columns. So now I can return the step here. Okay, so there are times that it might just be that the one you highlighted is the one you are removing. That is where you click here. But if you want to keep this one and take off others, then you click on what? Remove other column. Now let's look at duplicate. So let's say you want to remove what? Duplicate column. So if you click here, you see what happened. So is there any column that is duplicated? Let me return this because I noticed it jumped to what? To that item type. It jumped to what? Item type. So let's try it again. Remove duplicate column. So you can see that yes, we have region twice. We have region twice. We have region twice. Yeah, we have region here, and then we have it here. Sorry, what it did is that it's not removing, it's to create it. Now, what happened is this. Let's assume that you have this particular column and you want to duplicate it somewhere else, probably after the last column. So you right click and select what? Duplicate the column. That is what happens. So there are times that maybe you want to delete. Now look at the data cleaning operation I can do with it. Let's assume that I am reshaping my data such that I want this region that is currently here to come after it should be the last column, which means that after the whole thing, I'll just come here and right click and then what? To remove it. So we can use that idea as reason for that. So we are still on some of those commands that are attributed to cleaning column. Now we have add column from example, add column. So if I click here now, this is just like you are adding another column and it's telling you that you do what? Enter sample value to create a new column that you should press what? Control plus enter to apply. So I can just click OK to see what happened. So no sample value were what? Provided. So we do not need that because it's as if we are creating a new data set. So it's not all the features that are applicable anyway. So maybe I will just focus on the ones that pertain to data cleaning, not generating data from scratch. So remove duplicate. This one will work because like we highlighted, duplicates are very dangerous. So if I click on it, it will also, you can see what happened. So it looked through the entire data and pick only one country representing what, sorry, one region representing all the regions that were there before. And that has led to what? Reducing the data volume to this as what? The unique value. So I can return it. So it means that you can just take a column, probably I just want to find out, it could be that you just want to find out how many unique value. So if you remove that duplicate temporarily, you just count and then you note it in your executive report. That might be the reason. Now, another thing again is that remove errors. So that is very important. So it depends on what it sees as error. All right. So once you click on it, if there are errors, the program will have detected them. And then the way you will know is that if the values, if there are errors, you will see them what are listed for you to know that there are error. So if it does not return anything, it means that what there are no errors in the data. I'm still trying to explore some of the command you can get under column data cleaning. So we have change type. So change type is the same thing as the one I showed all the other times. So let's say you don't want to come through here to change string to decimal number. You can right click and get it through what? Change type. So which means I've already covered that. So let me just go straight to the next one, which is for data cleaning. We have transform. Transform, this is also very important. There are times for consistency purpose. You might be asked to make all the values to appear in lowercase, uppercase, or in any of these transformation features, we have lowercase. So if I click here, you can see that all the values under this column are shifted or switched to what? Lowercase. So I can go back and say, okay, I want to switch them to uppercase. I can go back and say, okay, I want to switch them to capitalized. That is where only the beginning letter, the capital letter, while the rest will be small letter. And then you can as well say, okay, we are still under the transform features. You can trim. So what trim does is to remove what? Excess space, which you notice that nothing happened because we don't have such. So anyone that, because all these things that we are looking at depends on the data set you are given to work with. So for the fact that we are not seeing their response on this particular data, it could just be that this data does not have those errors. So there are some error data sets you'll be given where all this will be playing their role. But I'm just trying to walk us through them. Then clean, and then this will run a kind of analysis to check if there's anything that needs to be put in order and make the data look more consistent. Then we are still under transform. We have the length. So you can see this one, what it did is that it did a kind of a counting of each of them, but that is not what we wanted. So, but it might be applicable to some persons. Like I said, you can see all the steps we have applied. That is the beauty of Power BI. Any step you have applied, in case you want to return it, you can always what? Return all the what? The changes. All right, so let me see if I still have another one that is very important. Yeah, we have replace value. This one is very important. For example, now you have a place where you have male and female written full, and you want to convert them to what? M and F. So I will just use this one as an example. Let's see where I have H. All the H should be replaced with what? Maybe another information, maybe yes, or maybe male. So the perfect scenario will be where we have gender, but I don't think we have that in this data set. So that will be the perfect scenario. Okay, so now let me use where I have just two values. I have online and offline. So I want to replace offline with local and then replace online with remote, for example. So maybe my analysis will go better with these terms. So I will right click and then go to what? Replace value under this column. Then it will ask you to specify the value to find the existing value that is to be replaced. So I will type it just like the way it is there. So offline is the value I'm finding. Then when you find it, then replace it with local, like we said, replace it with what? Local. So I execute. So you see that what? All the offline have been changed to what? Local. You can see how you are doing this are very easy with Power BI. Most of these things that we are doing like this are not that flexible like this if you are using other tools. So now I want to go back and change. I want to go back and replace which other one we replacing? We are replacing online the way it is in the data set, and then we are replacing it with what? Remote. We are replacing it with remote. So once I click, you see that what? I have achieved that. So like I said before, you have male and female, and you want to just represent them with what? M and F. You have a value. It could even be someone's name that is repeated in a column, and you see that probably is a mistake, and you are given the right name. You don't need to go back to the data and start, changing all these things manually. You can just use all these techniques to get that adjusted. I hope we are following. Let me know if I can get response this time around. I hope all is going well with us. I hope we are following. Mrs. Oyikosi and the
Yes,
rest.
we are following.
Okay. All right. So let me see if I still have some other ones. I just want to make sure that I finish everything that has to do with column cleaning before we look at row, because that will be the last aspect of the cleaning. Now we have a replace error. So should in case we run the code and we see enter the value which will replace error. So there are times you load data here, you will say null or NaN, which means that what? They are error or cell with missing value. So, but what we are doing right now, should in case you find any error, we want you to replace it with 0, for example, if there is. So we allow the function, the application to decide. So where you see any value turn it to 0, under that column you selected, then you know that's what? That was an error. So these are perfect way you can perform that cleaning. Now, let's see, I still believe there are still few of them that I can still explore here. Group by is taking us to analysis, just like, so specify the column to group by and this desire what? Output. So this is, okay, let me classify this under cleaning anyway. But what we're talking about here is that we want to group columns. So from the data set, you have total cost. We have all these headers. All right, so I can say, okay, I'm selecting this one. And then that is for new column name. New column name. You give it a new name. Let's say it's going to be, let's say, tutor. Let's see if it's going to make sense for data cleaning for us. Fine. New cost 2. Let me just use that. Then operation, what do you want to do? What do you want to, that's why I said this is like analysis. Well, let's just go through it. Now, this particular the sum of the value here is what will form this new column. That is the idea. When you select average, the average of the value here is what will form this. The minimum, so these are different functions you can actually use, so you can change it. And then once you do that, the column region, you can see the column that you are referring to where you have the value that will be sum of that will form this. So if I click OK, now coming back to your data, you can see that what you have generated a new column and you perform a calculation. The calculation was, remember, to sum up the value in total cost in the previous one. That is the one that formed this. So that's why I said this is actually, you can see the function generated here. That is one good thing about it. You always see the dash function. Remember we talk about dash, data analytics expression, which is the language Power BI uses in developing all its functions. So you can see you always get your dash function once an action is performed. Table.group, promoted what? Header, total costs, and then total, that is the value you have in total cost, and then each what? Each of the value were summed up with value of revenue, and then type number, and this is what you have here. So you can remove it if you don't want it. I still believe there are still some things I can show us here that falls under. So you can split your column. Let's look at it. This is very important. You can split your column. So let me look for a perfect scenario for splitting your column, and also cite when splitting column might be necessary. Like I told us, your current data might not fit into some of these things, but you should be able to know when you are given a data that requires, as I'm trying to, even though I don't have some error, I'm trying to manufacture them. Now, for example, if you look at this now, if you look at, let's say you have a column with names. I think at this point, let me shift to a different data. I think I should be able to, so you can see I have switched from, I'm cleaning. You can see that all the data you have loaded, you can be cleaning them here simultaneously because they are here. So right now I have switched from that initial data to a new data so that I can get a perfect scenario. Let me go to where I have names. Let me go to where I have names and see if I can apply this. All the names are okay. Does it mean that I've already applied it? Let me see if I can. Okay, that means it was split. Okay, no. Now we have what? Employee's name. Now there are times names can be given to you in a way that you have first name and surname together in one column. First name and surname together in one column. And they ask you to split them. For example, the surname should be in a separate column from the first name. All right. So I'm just assuming, like here now, it's just their first name, one name that have been entered. And even we have Vero Prosper or Vero something or Emeka Ojo. That is two names together. Now you can separate them. You can split them in a way that the first name become an independent column, and the other one can also be independent column. I want to find out if we are following. Did you get that explanation? I'm trying to I'm trying to forge, trying to get a perfect scenario because you might be given a data set that meets that requirement. So in this case, I am just going to be, splitting based on character. Because once you right click and you come to split column, we have options here. We have by delimiter, we have by the number of characters. So I can say, okay, by second character. That is when you count the first character from the second character split it just because we do not meet that requirement of two names. So I will just deploy one of these just for us to see how it works. All right. So by delimiter, by a position you define it by the lowercase. Maybe you have a column with values where some are lowercase, some are uppercase, as the case may be, and you want to use a particular case to determine the point at which it should what split from. So the popular one that we normally use most time is what? By delimiter. So if you click on that by delimiter, it will now prompt you a dialog box like this. Now you need to understand what happened here. Now this particular data that you want to split, what is separating? Adibin we have first name, second name together, but they are space. So then I will now say, okay, the value I want to split, they are separated by what? Space. So which means that it will not cut it from the space. But in this case, by default, it will always come with comma. So you can choose, but you have to look at the data. You have to look at the data. You have to look at the data. Now, let's just go with one of them. Let's assume that I'm using, though it did not meet any of this because we don't have two words here. All right. So let me even see if I can get, let me check customer, if I can get something that can work for us. Perfect. Good. Even this data set now is even the best because we have a lot of cleaning error here. But let me check here if I have something like that. This one. Okay. Okay. Now, like here, I have two words here, high school, graduate school. So let's say I'm working with this. Let's say I'm working with this. So right click, select what? A split column by delimiter, and then look at it between the high and school. What is separating them? Space. So I will now make sure that what? I select space. That is the point I was. If there's a comma there, then you select comma. So you must always check what is separating the words you want to split so that you know what to pick here. Then you want to define from which angle you should look at it from. Is it from the leftmost delimiter or the right? So you can go with this one. And then quote character. So you click here and say, okay, maybe you should just quote it. So let's apply it and see what happened. You see what happened here. It removed what? The first one by the space because I choose by space. And the ones that do not have value, the ones that do not have two words, they are the ones that are showing null here. So which means that if I am to rename this, so it has already renamed it, but I may not go with the word, the name. I may decide to rename it myself, which is part of what we should know. All right. So let's say I want to rename it. I will just double click on it. I will just say, okay, maybe this one is Edu. Why this one? Just double click. This one is Edu 1. This one is Edu 1. Now, if I'm to clean this data now, that is what I will say what? If you right click here now and remove errors, where is that one? Because when I did it, if I say, okay, replace error with 0, let's see if it's going to capture that. So you can see that what? It did not capture this as error because it just seen it as an empty space. So in this case, you will now use what? Replace value. These are where you use replace value, search for null, search for null. Anywhere you see null, replace it with 0, which means that what? Empty. So you will now be able to what? To do your analysis. So I believe you have seen how we were able to split the column by the space between the words. So that is for that one. I want to see, I think I'm done with. So this is the rename. If you don't want to double click, and then you can move. You can move. For example, maybe I want to move a particular column. It might be because we talk about data cleaning is about reshaping. I can decide to say, okay, I want to move a particular, maybe just to rearrange my data to reshape it. So move, I want to move it right. So you can see that what it has moved it what to the right hand side. I can come here and say, okay, I want to move this name. So I will right click here. I'll select what move it to the right. That is what I've automatically changed the order. You can see how we are performing all this so easily. Any question so far? Any question? Any question? Any question, please? If you have question, you ask. If you don't have question, um, I will just look at the last aspect, which is what? Working with rows. In case you have errors along the rows, how do you attend to them? Because all these I'm talking about since they are data cleaning techniques or logic that falls under columns. Any question, please? I want to get a response before I continue of the advantage of Power BI. It has all these fantastic data cleaning. You can see what we have demonstrated so far. Very easy to perform data cleaning. So let me just round up with the last section, which is if we are to clean our data within rows. So how do we go with that within rows? Because everything we have done so far pertains to what? Errors that can be detected along what? Columns. So that will now take us to exploring this option. Sorry, we have done this, remove column. Sorry, I think yes, we have touched all this. So that will take us to this section, which means what? Keep rows and remove rows. So let's start with the keep row section. Under keep rows, sometimes we have so many data cleaning when it comes to row. Row means the horizontal. So we have keep top rows. So for one reason or the other, like this data set now, maybe my analysis involved that I should keep the top 10. They are the only ones I want to analyze. Every other record should be deleted. Or probably you are just trying to examine your data. Not that will be your final operation. You are just trying to examine the data. So you want to let me check the top 10. Let me check the top row. So you can just say, okay, keep the top, and to ask you to specify the number of the top rows to keep. I was okay, keep 10. Keep what? 10. And then if you click, you can see that what? That has also reduced the entire data to what? 1 to 10. So maybe you are just trying to find out something. You want to know the names that appear at the top. Or you want to check for a value here. Or you want to check for the state that makes what? The first 10. So you can return it. So that is how to explore that particular. Now, still under it, we have keep bottom row. Just like the opposite of the one I just did now. You want to keep from the bottom. The once you click, it will also prompt you a dialog box to specify how many bottom rows you want to keep. Okay, keep maybe 5 for me. I want to check the 5 record at the bottom of this data set. Okay, so I have it. So I return it. You can see that this is actually very simple. The next one is what? Keep range. Keep range is where you now want to define from which row to which row. Because the one we did now just strictly talk about top and bottom. So in between, you can say, okay, first row, I want to keep maybe from row number 10, the number of rows you want to have. I want to have 20. That's what from row number 10, count what? We want to get 20 of them. And then you have it. Then we have it. So now the same thing, you return it. Let me exploit the other option there. So we have keep duplicate. Now this one is very important. Duplicate along the rows. So if it return any value, it means that what? That is a duplicated value. What it sees as duplicate is not because you have maybe Toby repeated here, and then you must have the same value across all the column before it sees this as duplicate. So let's say keep duplicate. You see that what? It keeps nothing. So in as much we got this empty array, it means that what? There is no duplicate. So it's a very good sign to you as a data analyst When you get you are sure that there's no duplicate, at least, because if there's duplicate, it will have returned it. So you must, like I told us from beginning, don't assume. Always check all these things. It's very important. So the next one is keep errors. So this is also very good. So if there are error, it will list them. If it doesn't list anything, then you are also sure that there is no error. So you can see that what? No error. So this is also very important. We apply it for us to check for errors or not. So that brings us to the end of the one here. Let's go to the next category where we have remove rows. So this one is talking about, deleting now. Want to remove the top 10 or the top specified row. I want to remove the top 5 rows. I will just specify and click. So those rows has been what? Removed. Then I can return it. Then you also want to remove bottom row, just like the opposite. I want to remove the bottom 5 rows. Click the same thing. So you can see that these are very simple to understand. Then we want to remove alternative row. So what we see as alternative row is that if you have the first row, the second row is an alternative row to first row. Then the fourth row is an alternative to third row. The sixth row is an alternative to fifth row. The eighth row is an alternative to seventh row. So if you understand that logic, that's what it means. So the first, let's say I'm taking this, then first row to remove, that is what? Row 5. The number of rows to remove from that 5, remove 2. Number of rows to keep between, so you specify. So all this, if you understand it, you will see how it works. So it has followed that logic, and then the necessary rows will have been removed. Then the next one is remove, I think, remove duplicate. Yes, across the row. I thought we have applied it before. The next one is remove blank. This one is very important in case probably there are some empty rows, and you know that they will cause some distortion when you are performing your analysis, right? Because Power BI must have read it in as no, 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 no. So you can just click here. If there is any complete empty row, Power BI will take it off. Then we have remove what? Errors across the row as well. So if there are any error, the other one was keep error. So that one is also used to check if there are error. Why this one is also good to apply to remove them if so. Definitely if the other one did not keep error, this one shouldn't what have anything to remove. All right. So the split column that I have touched, most of this group by that I've touched through the shortcut, change data type, all of them, majority of those features are scattered on this. All right. So where we will talk about this is querying. This one is actually when you are talking about what? Database. So maybe you want to merge two data sets together. You want to merge two data sets together. That is when you will need this for database. That is if you import data from database. Remember, let me try and do something like of that, but I don't have database where you will need that word merge query and what append. They are for merging. They can give you two different data sets, you merge them together, or you append them together. Now look at this here. When we're talking about getting data. So if I select, we are in a Power Query now. All right. So when we wanted to load in data, remember that we have gateway, we have get data, we have options like database, we have options like CSV. So if you are bringing data from database and you want to merge them together, that is where this will make sense. But right now we did not even use that option. So let me just leave here and see if we can achieve something of that nature. So now that I have done all the necessary cleaning on the both data, for example, I have done all the cleaning that I needed to do on this data set. Then, like I told us, you come here and select what? Close and apply. Or I can select apply first, then I come back and select what? So I can just click here, close and apply, and then that will return us back to this. So what I was actually Okay, still processing. Still processing. I think the update is completed. So what I was saying is this. Let's say you want to load data from a database. Let's hold on. Something is still going on. So I'll select apply changes. So it's still trying to process, trying to update the data. So let's give it some time. So just hold on. It's still updating all the data adjustment that we did. So let's give it some time to make sure that it updates all the operations. Okay, so perfect. It has updated your data after all the cleaning. So you can exit. Something is still loading, just hold on. Okay, so I think that is settled. Now, this is what I was saying. When you click here, when we're learning how to load data, we only loaded data from this and the CSV. So let's assume that you are loading data from database. You are loading data from, let me click on more. Let's say you have database in your system or maybe remote where you want to load data from. Data from, where will I go now? These are all database. Let's say my SQL Server data, or even let's say database. So we have all these as different database where you can load data. Maybe you have data residing in any of these that you want to load from. So you click on connect. But remember, the reason why we did not go through because we don't have database. So if a company, like I advise us then, if a company have a database, then what they are going to do is that they will give you the login detail, because you can see that it's asking for the server, it's asking for the database name. So once you load query data like that, that is where you use that option that I was trying to explain to us over there. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we have covered almost all the data cleaning techniques, functions that you need to know as far Power BI is concerned. So our next class, we shall be starting the analysis properly. I will make sure, please, I want to advise us that we should not miss that class. Monday, we should be able to start analysis. We have not been meeting up on Mondays. Please, let's try to be there because I wouldn't want anybody to miss it. That Monday, I think it's just 1 hour. That 1 hour analysis will go far. Why I did not want to take this, so because you can see the time it took. I don't want to rush it. That is why I suspended the class last time. But 1 hour is a good time for us to perform a lot of analysis. So let's endeavor to join. So just in case you come across this video and you want to know the organization that is offering this training. So we are called Digitech Zeal Hub. We are called Digitech Zeal Hub. We are called Digitech Zeal Hub. So it's an online platform where You learn so many tech skills ranging from cybersecurity, data analytics, web development, mobile app development with Python and Python for data science, Python for data analytics, graphic design, video editing. Think of AI automation. All of this program can be trained on this platform. So my name again is Eguero Prosper, an IT consultant and CEO at Digitech Hub. So just in case you want to WhatsApp me directly to ask how you can start your training like this live via Zoom, you can WhatsApp me on +2347069665919, or you can dive into my website or our website at www.digitech.com.ng. And then you can also reach out to us via YouTube. In fact, our YouTube is packed. We have over 460 master classes video like this across these different aspects that we train on that I just mentioned. It will be of good place. It will be of good beneficiary to you. Go there and explore and learn even free. Okay? But you can also register for master class so that you will now have the opportunity to be mentor and then ask question, we answer the question, and then the classes will be live just like this one you just watched. So if you want to visit us at YouTube, just go to at Digitech Zeal Hub. Then you can also search for us on Facebook using the same address and also TikTok. So we are your tech companion. Reach out to us and then you start learning from anywhere. Our trainings are online, just like this one you just went. See you. Bye again. Bye for now. See you next time.